Hello and welcome to Say Hi to the Future, Ingenious Thinkers, a podcast aimed at highlighting the human side of ingenuity. With me today is Peter Krask, president and founder of the Creative Guide, a platform that helps professionals, entrepreneurs, and creators unleash the full power of their creativity, move beyond their limits, and achieve their goals. Peter, welcome back.
Ken, thank you. It's nice to be back. I appreciate the return appearance.
Well, you don't look any older. It must have been just about a month ago.
I don't know, my beard looks a little whiter. I don't know. It always there always seems to be
Well,
more of that. But
it's a nice winter white.
yes.
Tell me about some of the books behind you.
Some of the books behind me.
I'm just staring at them.
It's kind of a full collection. There's travel up there, photography, art history, literature, um, a lot about creativity, and then I have a lot of photo paper, a lot of boxes of small photo paper, kind of
Okay.
that shelf there. So
Oh, I see that. Very nice.
yeah,
Okay, so that's a nice mix. I don't see any international accounting, but
no international accounting, but I do have the globe over there, so maybe that's
that's perfect. So, I ask that because creativity, I mean, you can't keep staring at the same screen.
no, it's true. And I think one thing I feel very fortunate about in my career is having had the opportunity to work in a variety of mediums and really, engage with questions about process and creativity from a wide variety of standpoints. So whether that's working with, a large TV show in production, or working with a client one-on-one, the scale is different and the process is different in terms of how many people are involved, but the questions are kind of the same. I more and more I just feel everyone's asking the same question, even if the technology is different. The questions are always the same, which is how do I get this thing in here, out there? Um, and I think that's a question we're all asking. So,
So, what are some of the best stimuli in
hmm.
our daily lives? Like, is there something that I can do, like get up in the morning and do whatever, just to stimulate my brain a little bit?
Well, I mean, I think I struggle with this myself. I think the one thing to do is not check your phone first thing in the morning.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, that immediately wires our brain in all kinds of ways, which are probably not the most helpful, if the studies are to be correct. Um, I mean, I'm not somebody who wakes up like ready to go. I need a little time to ease into the day, but I usually start my day with some writing, even if it's just 10 minutes, just to move my hand across the paper. There's something about sort of connecting, that energy. I think there's something about a hand moving gets our brain working in a really useful way. Depending on which expert you read, meditating is always good, even again if it's just 10 minutes. Or I have a lot of photo books and art books. Sometimes I just spend some time just looking at it, flipping through them, just as a way of connecting with how people see the world and how, sort of how many ways are possible. Or a
So,
walk. I think you just mentioned walking your dog, but walking is also a good thing. I think, again, it's like moving your hand, something about how that connects to your brain, I think opens up your thinking in a really good way.
so do you use any of these when you're working with business groups? Like, because we're all stuck in these, we move from cubicle to bigger cubicle back to little cubicle, like
Yeah.
with some,
Um,
sorry, with some silly pictures on the wall that we have four words and everyone knows the same four words. And so we tune off completely. So,
right. I do actually. I think, it's important. just to speak to what you said, that I think there is that just turning the view even, a little bit, you start looking at things in a different way, or get a different sense of possibility. And, that's something we all have to do in our work, just in general, right? I mean, yes, there are some tasks that are rote, or, things that just need to happen. But I think particularly given the world of work and how responsive we have to be and how adaptable we have to be, I think now there's being able to sort of quickly ask the question, what's possible here? Because we're always getting reoriented now much faster than we used to. That's connecting to a very simple exercise is a great way to sort of take some of the difficulty out of that. Just, again, moving your hand simply gets you in that space of, oh, something else actually is possible. So I think there's a lot of value in doing that.
Just one other thing I want to ask, and then we'll pick up our last conversation. It's something in your background that I don't think we talked about before. Expert coach for Columbia University's See You Grow vendor development program. So, talk to me about the program, but what is a vendor from the perspective of See You Grow to start?
So this program, it's a great program, and I've been with it for 4 years now. It was developed through the facilities department, actually, at Columbia University. So obviously, it's an enormous campus. They have a lot of facilities, and some of which are historic, some of which are new built. And as a way of engaging with the community, they've developed this program, See You Grow, which works with small minority-owned businesses in the community who could possibly become potential vendors. And that covers a wide variety of services. Many of them are engaged in, building facilities, whether that's contractors, plumbers, electricians, all the way up through engineers, architects, designers, and kind of everything in between. The program's actually expanded. This year we have 2 cohorts. Normally we only have one with 20 firms, and I think this past year we had 40, which is a significant change. But it's a year-long training program that's very rigorous, that works with these businesses to get them to a level of functionality so that they can interact with a system as complex and large as Columbia. Because many of these businesses, since they are small businesses, they're family owned or have been passed down. And while they have excellent service and excellent product, they may, still be doing things like their dad did and not thinking about sort of larger systems and ways of growing their business and managing that in a way that's aligned with their size and capabilities. And over the course of the year, they develop a 3-year strategic growth plan and do a final presentation to a panel of experts about their business, about their growth plan. And then many of them, depending on Columbia's needs, have the opportunity to meet with people who make the decisions about potential vendors, RFPs, that kind of thing. So it's a terrific program. It's free for the firms who join. They work very hard. It's very rigorous. They have a lot of homework to do. And they also have the opportunity, in addition to a coach who works with them one-on-one, they get to meet, there's a lot of procurement events. So they get to meet with, experts in insurance and experts in hiring and experts in finance and an incredible pool of resources. So sometimes I wonder how I got in the program as a coach, even though I've owned my own business for 20 years. I don't have an MBA. I'm not somebody who comes from that world. in one respect, but having owned my own business for 20 years in New York and dealing with some very large corporate clients, I had to educate myself very quickly about how things work. But it's storytelling and creative problem solving, like anything is, I think, at the end of the day.
Well, you know what? I'm glad I asked. I mean, when I started my career, the first business was natural bath and body care. We're talking 30 odd years ago at this point, but we're not counting. It was a very different category. Like it wasn't a category that most major retailers were in. They were sort of dabbling. And a lot of retailers just, and I think this is good for any business, not just for retail or Columbia. Just some of them would just tell you, no, you gotta be able to handle 2,000, 5,000, whatever it is, stores like right now, today. And you go, well, one, I can't. Two, you're kind of missing out on the next great idea. And then there are others that were actually in one case very much larger, an American-based one that had this phenomenal program of, how to get you from, it wasn't quite as low as 20 stores, but 20 to multiple thousands in a certain period of years. And they just had really wonderfully cool products on their shelves because of that. And it really, I don't have the stats on customer retention, but it was certainly a reason for me on the consumer side to keep going and saying, hey, what's that new cool product? Because,
Yeah.
whether it's a new, natural pop or whatever it was, I knew I could find interesting things there, plus another 50,000 items or whatever. So for me, these are critical ways of thinking for large companies.
Yeah, I think so. And that idea of partnership and kind of bringing somebody along with you.
Hmm.
And, I think there's a reciprocal relationship there, right? Of you can help someone get to a certain level with their idea, but also their idea is also helping them get to a certain level or reach a new kind of community or reach potential customers in a way that they hadn't before. And, in that sense, I think everyone benefits and, that opportunity to learn from each other, because I always say this to the firms I work with is that, I'm not the answer guy. I mean, there are some questions I can answer, obviously, but, I'm there to learn alongside with them and help them focus their questions in a way that's powerful and constructive because a question like how do I get from 20 stores to 2,000 can seem overwhelming. Like there's just seems to be no direct way to answer that question, but having somebody with you who can sort of help you figure out what the right questions actually are, I think is really powerful. And also opens up all kinds of potential ideas that the partner may not think of or the supplier may not think of too. So it's always that interesting exchange opens up all kinds of possibilities.
Peter, I think that was a wonderful segue to our last conversation. You mentioned ideas. Now, last time we talked, it was a lot about creativity and the art of innovation and storytelling. So for our listeners, when this goes up, we'll refer you back to that first conversation. If you want to listen to some great ideas or great thinking from Peter on those topics. But we ended on something really important. The idea that won't leave you alone, and I think that's why we're back here today, is to talk about that idea that won't leave you alone. And what is that idea? When you even say that, what is that idea for you? What does it mean?
Me personally, wow, that is a very good question because it changes. Sometimes it's elusive in some respects, right?
Mhm.
for me, that shows up in a couple ways, which is basically the importance of making, just as a way of being in the world, that I think there's real value in putting that kind of energy into the world of wanting to be a maker and wanting to keep your hand moving, sort of in the simplest way. And I also think, I have a pretty staunch belief that, everyone has an innate creativity and an innate way of seeing the world that somehow can be expressed. And, there's many of the clients I work with are like, oh, I'm not creative. Or I think of some of my business students when we do some creativity exercises in the classroom. I still remember it was one of my very first classes. One of the students, it was the first day, and it was a good question, but it was our first session, and she raised her hand and she said, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but we're business students. Why are we doing any of this? That's got nothing to do with what we do. And I just fundamentally don't believe that. I think, we're all engaged in making, and there's a toll, a personal toll, I think, and a spiritual toll and a psychic toll of ignoring that energy, of believing that you don't have that creativity. Now, does that mean we're all going to be famous artists or famous business people or whatever? No, but there's still tremendous value in connecting with that energy and sharing that with people, even if it's just a small circle of friends or your customers or people on Instagram. There's a variety of ways of sharing, but I think that's kind of my basic idea, if that makes sense.
Well, it does. I really like that. And I think as you describe it, you bring up a couple of important things. One, sharing the idea, which is even if it's modest, it's research. It's first level research. And two, the idea that idea has value. And I think that to me is really critical, because that's where you're bridging from the idea that won't leave you alone and the idea that you need to leave alone.
Right.
Because, we all, not all of us, I mean, I definitely have narcissistic tendencies. I'm an entrepreneur. We all like to believe our own press sometimes. And
Right. Yeah.
a lot of times those ideas are just dumb. And other times, yes, they do have the potential to change the world. So talk a bit, and this is where the student, and I think you addressed it properly, but they need to understand the bridge between successful business and creative ideation. And it really does help you in understanding what to pursue and what to leave alone. So what are some of the filters? What are some of the processes from, filling the wall to the idea that won't leave you alone to, I'm going to put $1 million bet as a larger company on this?
Well, I think, there's a couple ways of thinking about that. I mean, and some of this will sound a little more abstract. It may not, it may not be like, here's 10 things to notice specifically, but the bad idea, I don't want to see even the bad idea, or the idea that's not worth pursuing, usually runs out of gas pretty fast, and I think as entrepreneurs, we're constantly coming up with ideas. Oh, what about this? What about this? Or, and they're kind of shiny and exciting in the moment. But I think the ones that quickly run out of steam, that's just a natural way of selection in some ways, because they don't stay with us. They don't catch. They don't have any grain for us to hold on to. And I think some of that is more about developing, a sense of how to listen to your ideas and sort of give them space, because I think everything moves so quickly today that we expect sort of an immediate result from an idea, like, oh, I have this idea, then this thing will happen, and then, all our problems are solved. The idea that won't leave you alone sometimes is a little slower to emerge. I think you have a couple layers to sift through before you get to that core thing. And usually that's a process of sifting through sort of the ancillary ideas that are kind of covering the really important idea. And I'm sure, in your own experience, it's like with research. You have a lot of layers of things to sift through before you can find that unexpected kernel or that result where you're like, oh, this is actually the important detail.
Yeah.
But I don't think usually in researching something, you don't immediately get that answer or right on that first level. It takes some time to kind of sift through it. So some of that is practice, right? An understanding of that process that, when I'm researching something or having an idea about something, it usually follows a certain pattern and being aware of that pattern. So when you're in it, you'd be like, oh yeah, this is the point in the research where it looks like there's no conclusion. And if I stay with it a little longer, then I'll find the thing. And some of that is instinctual, right? You developed an instinct for that. You develop some facility with it. So I think that's really important. And the other part of it, I think, is a willingness to just let the ideas be out there first, because I think we start judging them very quickly too. And we can lose the good idea. I mean, just, from a writing example, for instance, your first draft is always going to be crappy. That's just what it is. That's why it's there.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you're doing it. And when I work with people on writing, there's always this expectation that the first draft is supposed to be perfect or have all the right answers. It's really not. Like, just let yourself have that really crappy first draft. And then you can start finding, what's important and what's essential, what the idea really is. But I think you have to allow yourself that space to have the really bad first draft. I'm sure when you were making your products, like, you didn't get the perfect product right out of the bat, right? It took a couple tries to get to the right one.
Peter, I'm pretty sure I'm correct in saying it was Usain Bolt, the phenomenal sprinter who said, with regards to the Olympics, I mean, I train 4 years for under 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And it was basically saying what's wrong with people who are expecting things to happen tomorrow morning, get to market tomorrow morning. So absolutely, we have to be responsive to the market, but as responsible business people or innovators, we need short, medium, long-term, simple through disruptive. We need a portfolio, no different than our stock portfolio. And some things are everything needs to percolate, but some things need to percolate faster, depending on. The other thing I just want to pick up on is when you said, speaking to other people, one of the points I make with business audiences now or workshops is, I ask them, do you talk with your customers, or how often do you do? And most, you sales will put up their hands, and nothing wrong with, it's not a knock on sales. I go, oh, we talk to our customers every day. We know exactly what we're thinking. And I say, no, you know exactly what they're ordering. You don't know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
And you need to go out, and I say this to entrepreneurs, CEOs, whatever, team leaders, you need to be going out quarterly, monthly, whatever it is, and speaking, listening to them on what their challenges are, and speaking some of your ideas to your point.
Right.
Not formally, just, hey, here's our thought.
And I think, there's, that connects to sort of this important thing of, what is the unspoken need there? Uh,
Hmm.
and learning how to listen for it and just, ask. You can't, I mean, I think it would be difficult as a salesperson to be like, hey, what's your unspoken need? But if
Right.
you can have that conversation to kind of see if you can uncover that, that's important information. It's crucial information. And
And that's where you can take it away, though, from sales to the CEO.
right,
Um, yeah, so that one is, look, hey, focus on getting the orders in. Like you're in business, work. If you're selling, you sell.
yeah,
But then have that other path that says, okay, what do you need in the future? And let's figure out there's a commonality that can help us sell more and figure out what the idea is that you shouldn't leave
right,
alone.
right. Well, and also I think, that ability to anticipate needs is, in any client-based thing is crucial. With my students, one of the classes I teach focuses on luxury industries.
Mhm.
So, for instance, we do some site visits and we spend some time with the hospitality industry. So, we go to these very high-end luxury hotels. There's one we went to where the private suite was, $18,000 a night to rent, and with a
Mhm.
3-night minimum. So you've got 60 grand to drop on a hotel room. So,
Did you have to pay for the mini bar or
they will stock the refrigerator for you
hey,
up to $200, but um,
100? Okay.
yeah. But built into that, and and it's the question the students don't think about, and I think part of the reason I like these site visits is the opportunity to talk to the people on the ground. There is a whole host of expectations built into that, and the staff's job is to anticipate all of those needs so that experience is seamless um, and that there aren't any hiccups along the way. Um, so even if that means on the staff end a lot of putting out fires or like having to find things, in 20 minutes or however that plays out. Um, the radar people have to have about anticipating those unspoken needs that's the skill.
Hmm.
And, um, you know, that's, that's a really powerful skill. And, um, and it's, when I ask them how they cultivate it, none of them are really sure either how they actually develop it, but you do get a sense of it. And I think,
Yeah.
that's about, that one-on-one interaction and learning how to listen and learning how to think about what's possible, what are other solutions available. And, that's a pretty crucial skill in any
Oh, it
business.
is. And you've hit on, I don't, when I teach and when I'm saying teach or help people learn, it can be students or it can be CEOs or C-suite. I don't use a lot of academic terms, but cognitive dissonance, meaning we're doing it one way, but we're not happy with it. That to me, I think that's what you're touching on here. And it's up to us in business to figure out where people are unhappy to a degree where we could solve it with a different product or service at a level which we can be profitable. And for me, though, it's funny because I think sometimes we try to make learning more complicated than it is in the sense of if you want to build the skill, do it. Take your SWOT analysis, which everybody does. And I'm convinced that people in organizations get paid by the point on the
Mhm.
page because there's dozens of them
Yeah.
that you file away, you don't touch it. And I just say to them, okay, great point. Take this one and do a scenario analysis.
Yeah.
Not knock it out. How do you think that? Why do you think that? I mean, what are people feeling? How could you resolve it? Like
Mhm.
building a skill is repetition until you're ready to bring it to market.
Right. Well, and it also involves, I think, it's again, not to overcomplicate it. It's a very simple skill of listening,
Hmm.
listening to yourself, listening to that process, listening to your client, and um, and listening to the information, because I think and we all do this as human beings, right? We we always go to the same conclusion, or this is how we've always done it, so this is how we're going to keep doing it. Um, and that ability to sort of step back a little bit and listen just a little bit longer, um, that's where the interesting thing comes up. That's where the solution comes up, or the possibility comes up. And I think, any client, that's ultimately what they want, is to feel like they've been heard, like somebody's actually
Right.
listening to them. And and there's a lot, there's so much sort of competing to be like, well, do all these other things, when actually the answer actually really is simple. If somebody just listens to you, that's the client that you're going to keep, I think, in my experience. So,
So there you go. The answer is simple if we listen.
yeah.
That's and Peter, we've done it again, and I'm going to end on that really important note. The answer is simple if we listen. Well, we've already gone about 8 minutes over.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do once again, because I really, really want to continue this on to talk about AI and storytelling and the importance of human and lived experience in the process. So let's look for part three.
Okay, I'm down for it. I have a lot to say about that. So
Sounds
I would
great.
love to continue that conversation, Ken.
Okay, thank you again, Peter.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me back.